Hello everybody. Firstly, apologies for not being with you in person. I'm currently on holiday in Wales, but I do believe this is a really important conversation and wanted to take the opportunity of being with you virtually, if not in person. So professionally, I partner organizations in high hazard industries to develop the leadership capabilities and cultures to keep us safe. And I have a particular interest in the prevention of low probability, high consequence events such as Grenfell. And from this lens, there are three topics that I'd like to explore today: confronting reality, compliance, and leadership. But before I start, I'd like everybody to stop for a moment and recall the first moment that you saw Grenfell Tower burning. For me, it was out of the window of my apartment, and later that day, I vowed to make sure that we learned from it, to make sure that those lost lives count. And it's that promise that has me with you today, so thanks for giving me the opportunity. My intention is to open inquiries and ways of thinking, as opposed to presenting any absolutes or truths. And my invitation is to listen from a space of curiosity and learning. Okay, so let's start with confronting reality. I was hopeful in the months after Grenfell that it would be the kind of disruptive event that leads to dramatic and lasting change, in the way that events such as Piper Alpha fundamentally changed the oil and gas industry. Over 2 years on, I am doubtful that this will be the case. The most significant factor that fuels my doubts is the failure to both confront and make transparent the brutal reality of how bad things are. The oil and gas industry has had to learn how to safely operate poorly maintained aging assets, which I think is analogous to the housing stock in the UK. They have had to learn how to create cultures where senior managers are not being fed sanitized information and greened dashboards, but are getting the truth. This starts with being willing to confront the brutal reality, knowing and embracing how bad things are. In doing this, you have to look distinctly at catastrophic risks, at preventing low probability, high consequence events. These are far more complex and difficult to see. Practicing chronic unease, imagining and mitigating against the worst thing that could happen that would lead to multiple deaths is perhaps the biggest access to this. We need to expand our thinking beyond the prevention of fires engulfing high rises as in Grenfell to consider what else could cause multiple deaths, such as building collapse or toxicity. From my perspective, a clear and transparent countrywide register of safety risks that considers low probability, high consequence events distinctly has to be the starting point. Until we confront the brutal reality at a national level, our actions will at best be reactive and are unlikely to deal with underlying systemic issues. Doing this will take courage and a move from blame to a learning narrative. But without it, promises to learn from Grenfell and prevent such events in the future will always run hollow. Digitization is obviously a key enabler for this. So now, on to compliance. I worry that we buy into a mythology that compliance will keep us safe. A culture of blind compliance can, in fact, increase the risk of accidents. It either pulls for thoughtlessly following rules without considering or understanding potential unintended consequences, or it pulls for people hiding and lying about where they don't follow the rules. Regulatory compliance does not guarantee safety. In the UK, we know that both the regulations and regulator have severe failings. But even good regulatory systems and regulators are by nature reactive. Given the increasing pace of change and innovation, they should be viewed as a minimum standard, not a gold standard that guarantees safe outcomes. I frequently get told stories about bad practice, of flammable cladding still knowingly being installed on high-rise buildings when more expensive alternatives are available, of people saying that they don't care what is safe as long as it complies with regs, of people being too scared to speak up about bad practice because of potential commercial repercussions. These stories break my heart. We need to bust the myth that regulatory compliance equates to safety. Organizations' internal standards, policies, and procedures can go beyond minimum regulatory standards and thus can promote good practice. However, we need to understand that there is always a difference between work as designed, which lives in our policies, procedures, and standards, and work as done. People's resilience and wisdom in navigating this gap is what enables organizations to function, and for the most part, to function safely. When the difference between work as designed and work as done is not openly explored and discussed, your risks increase. You do not know what is actually happening on the ground. You do not know the real risks and hazards you are facing, and you're making decisions based on an imaginary world, not on what is really happening. The view that our regulations, systems, and processes are perfect, and that the problem is that people don't follow them, is naive and keeps in place a blame narrative. What we need is to create a culture of mindful compliance, where regulatory compliance is not seen as a guarantee of safe outcomes, where there is open exploration of the gap between work as imagined and work as done, and where people understand the potential impact and consequences of their actions and are empowered to stop work and raise concerns. Moving to mindful compliance demands appreciating and tapping the knowledge of those at the coalface, of residents, of communities, of housing and local authorities, employees and contractors. We need to engage and listen, not from some paternalistic or moral perspective, but because their tacit knowledge and experience will enable safe outcomes, probably more so than that of the many technical experts sitting far removed in boardrooms and ivory towers talking about our safety. So to summarize what I've said thus far, in terms of confronting reality, the first step in learning from Grenfell has to be confronting the brutal reality. Until there is a clear, transparent, countrywide register of safety risks that considers low probability, high consequence events distinctly, any promises that we will learn from Grenfell will run hollow. And then around compliance. Firstly, compliance will never guarantee safe outcomes. There is always a difference between work as designed and work as practiced. And this mostly has good outcomes, and that is what has organizations function. The tacit knowledge of those at the coalface is as important to safe outcomes as the knowledge of technical expertise. And we need to move from a culture of blind compliance to one of mindful compliance. As I said at the beginning, my interest and experience is in creating the leadership capabilities and cultures to keep us safe. Confronting reality and creating a culture of mindful compliance are ultimately, I believe, challenges of leadership. From my perspective, as much as Grenfell resulted from massive regulatory failings, it was a result of poor leadership, of failing to create a safe culture. If we are to learn from Grenfell, it will require bold leadership from all of us. We cannot wait for the government or regulators or anybody else to implement change. It needs all of us, and it will require looking at ourselves in the mirror and understanding how each and every action we take is sending a message and either building a good culture or not. If you are engaged with confronting reality, this is an enormous opportunity to reset your culture. In particular, how you respond to bad news is a key mechanism for embedding a culture. Use it wisely. Don't underestimate the leadership and courage this will take. And when you are faced with difficult decisions, remember that first time you saw Grenfell burning, and let that help you make wise choices. I'd like to end with the words that Hanan Wahhabi spoke to Martin Morbik after giving evidence at the Grenfell inquiry. Hanan's brother, Abdulaziz, his wife Fauzia, and 3 children, Nohuda, Mehdi, and Yassine, died on the 21st floor. They were my neighbors. Here is what Hanan said. 72 people died as a result of what happened. None of them had to die. This could have been prevented and should have not happened. Please make sure there is change. Thanks so much for listening.